Hey folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. This podcast is being brought to you by On Target Claims, where their motto is on target from setback to settlement. Now listen, a little background. I've worked with these guys on the job, on the street for over 25 years, man, and they have always done the right thing and have always had my back. Now, in this second chapter, let them have your back. Right? You wouldn't go to court without an attorney. Why would you go up against an insurance company without representation, right? They represent you, the policyholder, when you go up against an insurance company submitting a claim. And I can tell you this, right? From beginning to end, they're going to be with you during the entire process. They're going to properly document that claim with the latest technology. And then when it comes time to getting things fixed, they've got a complete stable of vendors that are certified that are going to get it done right the first time. They also offer a pre-loss planning and policy review. So you know exactly what you're covered for, right? Make sure that you're adequately covered. The time to find out that you're not isn't after that horrific event. Okay? So give my friends a call at On Target Claims, 561-208-1775, or go to their website, ontargetclaims.com. They cover the entire state of Florida, offices in Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, and tell them John sent you. And now, let's get to the episode. You kick that. All right, folks, John Kelly, welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. Sitting down with Gene Reid. And man, listen, just blessed, man. I'm so fortunate to come across so many great people. And Gene's certainly one of them. Authored a book, right? And like that's all right. So what? Big fucking deal. This guy is such a good dude, man. Family man. Just a hard charger. And is doing all the things right, man, about not only taking care of his people, but just as importantly, like helping you do a better job of you taking care of your people and what that looks like in this world, right? We talk about emotional intelligence, right? Fucking what is it, man? Buzzword, right? He wrote a book and he broke it down in relatable terms. And that's what I love about the book. And so we're going to talk about police leadership, redefine the EQ advantage with Gene Reid. Hey, brother, man. Thanks for the time.
What's up, bro? That was a great intro, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Listen, sometimes it's not that easy, bro. Sometimes you're like, I'm sitting down with fucking this guy, and listen, you make it easy, man. You're a good egg, man. You're out there still on the job. Newcastle County PD, man, taking care of the troops, still getting after it, in a time, right? In a time where I will say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, man, there are just if many, if not more challenges coming from the interior of our PDs than there are externally.
Yeah, you have, technically you have like organizational stressors, right? Things that come from within.
Right.
And then you have operational stressors, like things that happen out on the road.
Right.
But listen, dude, it's the stuff that happens out on the road is not really, in my opinion, that's not really what stresses cops out.
No,
It's that internal stuff, all the red tape and all the administrative stuff. That's what gets like under people's skin. That's from what I've seen the most. I mean, I've been doing the job for 15 years, a decent enough time where the job itself never really bothered me that much. It was all the bullshit from inside.
Right. Yeah, I tell people, man, when I speak, I go, listen, if you've been doing this job for more than a year and you're having troubles with the job, find something else to do,
Find
man.
something else.
It ain't that hard.
You're 100% right.
The problems, man, the problems that we face inevitably come from within. And I love that, although maybe not set out to address those issues specifically, they're the ones where we fail when it comes to knowing anything about what emotional intelligence is and how that plays into our relationships. And dude, if you don't mind, man, I want to jump into the book right away because
let's do it.
You broke it down. You gave us the 4 pillars, which listen, Break it down for me, man, because I'm half a moron, right? And so we got to be self-aware and self-management, like those two components. And then it's almost like once we get that figured out, once we have a grasp on that, we can transition, I guess, into social awareness and relationship management, right? I mean, they're building blocks, are they not?
Yeah. So yeah, I like to talk to people like it's like a pyramid. So
Okay.
that first block is self-awareness, right? And I like how you just broke it down also. It's really, I can even, yes, there's four pillars to it, right? But we can also look at it in like two different hemispheres. So you got to take care of you first. So that's self-awareness and self-management. And honestly, dude, listen, self-awareness is 90% of that battle.
Right.
You, whether you're a formal leader, informal, whatever you want to call it, everybody's a leader, in my opinion, it's in some degree,
Sure.
but you got to figure you out. So do not think for a split second that you can start leading other people and helping other people if your shit's all jacked up. You know what I mean? So that's why
Yeah.
self-awareness, figure yourself out, and there's ways to do that, right? And
Right.
then learn how to manage your own emotions before you even consider going and reaching out and helping other people.
I love that. That it's clearly defined, because what we have is we have people going to step 4 that have not, I won't even say or when we say mastered, there's no mastering. We're constantly improving, especially when we're self-aware. We're realizing always where there's room for improvement. But a lot of times people kind of forget about this self-awareness part, and they just, well, hey, I got promoted. I'm the boss. And if I had a dollar for every boss that said, because I'm the boss, this is why. It's like, oh goodness, man, you have missed the lesson. You didn't even show up that day. Because that doesn't move the needle, man. That's not where we're at with this.
Now, one of the biggest issues I think we actually have in law enforcement is this like hierarchical rank structure and associating that with leadership. You
Mm.
can like in my department, right? The first actual tested promotion that you can do is sergeant. Some
Yeah,
other departments it's corporal or whatever, but for us
sure.
it's sergeant. But just because you become a sergeant or a lieutenant doesn't mean that you're a leader, right? I think you have leaders and then managers of people, right?
Sure.
Some people get really good at the administrative functions and then they work their way up through the chain of command. And that's not to say there aren't some lieutenants and captains that are great leaders.
Right.
But I'll tell you this, within our own department, some of our best leaders are not in formal promoted positions. They're on the road. They're corporals with 25 years on the job
Yeah,
who know the job inside and out, and people respect them. You know what I mean?
man.
So, and
Yeah.
again, that's not to suggest that you can't be a lieutenant and be very self-aware and manage your emotions and be great.
Right.
But let's not just assume because somebody has a title that they've put the work in and are actually like a great leader.
Right. Yeah, I think that often gets confused. Listen, I never rose above the rank of sergeant. I think I spent 17 years at that rank, and it was the best 17 years of my life, right? But the one thing that, understanding that there were times that I was a piece of shit leader, um, that I failed miserably, not only myself, my family, and my guys, but when I was on point, man, when I got my head out of my ass, um, I would enlist the counsel, aid, support, and input from guys that had that special. Hey, I don't need to be a SWAT team commander to know how to handle the situation. I just need to have confidence in the guy and go, hey, brother, man, what do we got here? And what would you do? That
That's
doesn't that doesn't
that,
mean I'm any actually that raises my leadership capital, does it not?
Yeah, dude, that's self-awareness though. So self-awareness is knowing your strengths and weaknesses and being okay with the fact that somebody else who has a lesser rank than you is going to be better. So I'm a great example. So most of my career was spent as a detective, right? Most of my background is in investigations. That's still what I do now as a supervisor. My tactical experience, I was never a SWAT guy. I was never on our mobile enforcement team. Like I'm not, that's not what I did.
Wasn't your
And when I
jam.
got yeah, when I got promoted, I had three guys on my squad or like in my area
Yeah.
that were SWAT guys. And guess what? Anytime we had a SWAT element or some type of potential barricaded subject, bro, I would look to them and be like, "Hey, what do you think we should do?"
Yeah.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, I'm going to own it. So
Yep.
let's make an informed decision here, right? Let me get your input and you know what? I think that I was blessed for the most part, right? For the most part, I had leaders that would come to me and go, "Hey, what do you put eyes on this, man? What do you think?" And you know, kudos to them, right? Because they knew that they didn't know, and as long as they went to the people that did, everybody wins. Everybody
Yeah.
wins.
Yep.
Um,
But that takes a lot, dude. I mean, like we're talking about it right now,
does
but that's a difficult thing to find, man. It is because just from what I've seen, so I've been a part of 3 different police organizations. So when I started out as a seasonal police officer in the city of Wildwood in New Jersey.
dude, you are like the fourth or fifth guy that I've spoke to
Uh-huh.
who got their start during the summers when those small beach towns
Yeah.
population went from 1,000 to
Yep.
20,000 over the summer.
We're everywhere. I was
That's
18
awesome.
years
I
old.
mean, what a
It was
concept. I
incredible.
mean, I just love it, man. What a concept to get, it's a great transition to get involved in law enforcement, you know. Anyways, it just you're like the fourth guy that I've talked to that they started with their whole summer officer. Well, it's a different category, I guess, right?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, they're called SLEOs, so Special Law Enforcement Officer 2. So we had a gun, we went through an academy, we did the whole thing. But we basically had full police powers while working, and then once we had to leave our guns in our lockers when we went home, like we weren't real cops.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it was a good time.
There's
But
a
I
bunch
worked
of cops right now that should leave their guns in their lockers when they go home, by the way. So I wouldn't use that as any test of how authentic or not you were.
Yeah. So I did that for 2 years, and then I went to Maryland State Police. I was there for a few years, and then I went where I am now for Newcastle County Police. So I've been like state police, city police, and now county police. I've been all across. I've seen all the different policing styles, and you don't find it too often. You find those gems every once in a while that you find a captain who's like a true leader and actually asks other people's opinions. But man, it only takes 1 or 2 really selfish people to get to that rank and just really be selfish and think they have to have all the answers to everything, and they don't really take input from other people. And it's just a cancer, man. It really
Yeah.
is. And it's just a shame.
The other dynamic is the guy who says he wants your criticism and your
Yeah.
critique and your input, and he's doing that because he went to a class at the NA and the NA told him that you should ask for input. Like he absolutely has no intention of listening or utilizing whatever information, but because it's something that, he was told he needs to do, um and then there's also those bosses that when you do tell them, "Hey, man, this is jacked up, boss. This is not going to go well." You know, I've always had those conversations off to the side.
Mhm.
Not in front of the main body of the element, right?
Yeah.
And and more times than not,
But
they're
it
like,
stings, dude.
"Really?"
Like I've had people myself. I've had people who are ranks above me that throughout my career, not a lot, like a couple times, have come to me,
Yeah,
pulled me aside, and been like, "Hey, I think you're jacking this up. I think you're messing this up, and this is what you should do instead." And it stings. Like it stings.
yeah.
It hurts. It feels like a
Whenever
gut punch.
anybody says, "Gene, no, I welcome constructive," okay, listen, you're human. Nobody
Yeah.
likes to be told that they're not what they purport to be.
Yeah.
And then, but having some self-awareness
Hmm.
is the key to absorbing that initial sting. Like, I thought I was on point on this. No,
Yeah.
no, not at all. No, do over, man, do over. Oh, okay. And I think we can develop some self-awareness. The I think that gets accelerated by the way in which people engage with us.
Hmm.
Like if that conversation, Gene, is held in front of your squad,
Mm.
man, not only am I not now, it's almost like you got to dig your heels in,
Yeah.
because the environment that's being created is you're undermined. So we can have those tough conversations with each other, but the person having the conversation has to have some social awareness
Yeah.
on how this is being perceived, and where and what and how, what's the right time to do this. And that gets back to the whole, I think, praise in public, and confront or condemn in private, right?
Yeah.
That whole, because I think, even though we're talking about this in kind of a layered step with a pyramid, um you really knowing, man, if you're going to be a boss or a leader, the timing of having these difficult conversations, right? If we have them at all, um, you can ruin good people by not getting this right.
Yeah, if you do it in front, this is why, dude, this is why I love emotional intelligence and why I think it's one of the best frameworks for leadership. Because look at all the examples we're coming up with for all these like different little pillars. But um, like social awareness, listen, I apply this to my kids, bro. Like
Right.
I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. And if I'm going to, my daughter's name's Layla, right? She's going to be 5 this summer. So she's really kind of like feeling herself and she gets a little sassy sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
But I make sure not to like scold her in public, right? Like say we're at Home Depot together. I'm never going to scream at her or yell at her in public, right? That's social awareness on my part to
Right.
know that, because she's going to dig her heels in. Like she knows that she's being embarrassed in public,
Mm.
and she knows now that dude, it's just going to go worse. So I'm going to remove her from the situation, and then in private we'll have that conversation.
Right.
But this works like across all age groups.
Oh, so well said. It's funny. My wife, she gets pissed at me. She goes, you don't ever lose your temper. You don't ever get mad. I don't ever show it.
Right.
I don't ever show it. I said, I told her, and I told this to my daughter, anybody that'll listen. The first person that raises their voice in a discussion or potential argument, they lose.
They lose.
Once you
Yep.
lose control of your emotions, argument's over. You've lost. You've lost
Yeah.
the argument. And
Yeah.
so my wife, I think, sometimes mistakes my not outwardly losing my mind with a lack of caring.
Mhm.
No, it's an important topic, and that's why I'm going to discuss it rationally.
Yep. Yep. Also,
Italian,
sometimes, I mean,
Italian and Greek, and if something's not flying across the room, I don't care.
yeah, she
Um,
probably, I mean, listen, I don't know your wife, but my wife sometimes, I think she just wants to see a reaction. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's
man.
just like,
Yeah.
you picked the wrong guy. You ain't
Yeah,
getting a reaction from
no,
me.
that's hysterical. There'll be, a car flipped over on fire, everybody screaming. I'm like, I pull off to the side of the road,
Yeah.
get out my window brake and the fire extinguisher, and hey, baby, call 911, let them know where we're at, that there's a car on fire, and I'll be back. And it just, you know, doesn't have that switch, right, to not react but respond.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
another
dude,
component,
listen. Oh,
right?
you just nailed it. I talk about this all the time, the difference between reacting and responding. So here's what I say, and we don't talk about emotions a lot in law enforcement, but here's what I'll say. Whatever emotions you are feeling at any point in time, whether it's you're angry about something, you're jealous about something, you're sad about something, you're happy, it's totally valid, and there's a reason that you're feeling that. What could potentially be inappropriate is how you react to it. So that's part of self-awareness and self-management. So here's what I do with myself, and I tell other people to do this is take a second to breathe. But whatever you feel, I'm
Amen.
telling you, you could be jealous. Like if somebody ever tells you,
Dude,
oh, you should never be jealous.
that's a
Like,
title of one of the chapters here, my friend.
yeah,
Breathe,
breathe.
page 66. Breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the
man.
reason I say that is because it allows you a second to just ask yourself, why am I feeling this emotion? And that just brief second just allows you to then respond to the emotion. Again, like, listen, there's been a lot of times when I feel angry about something and I would really just like to scream and yell at somebody, and that would be really cathartic and it would feel good.
Right.
but very rarely will that ever be the appropriate option.
No doubt.
You should really just take a second, breathe, respond. Responding just allows you a second to like, all right, let me relax for a second and go through what should happen
Yeah.
here.
I've actually, Gene, I've actually done that out loud. Like I've said, you know what, man? I know that anything I say from this point right now is not going to be taken the way I intended. So I'm going to circle back with you in about a half hour.
Mm.
I'm
That's
just
perfect.
like, I'm not, listen, I'm going to rip your head off right now if we have this discussion. I need a half hour to figure out the right way to have this discussion with you. And there's just, okay, right,
Mhm.
right. And not, no damage was done yet.
Yeah.
And then I get to come back on my terms and go, hey, you know, the reason why I got so upset was because, and now you're having a productive conversation, right? And you're
Yeah.
not losing your shit on somebody. And I think, right, when we can do that, everybody wins.
Dude, that's a tough skill. So I still struggle with this myself, and you can ask my wife. I wish my wife was there right now because, listen, we've been married for a little bit now. We get into arguments sometimes, and I
That's
need
good,
to.
by the way. That
What's
means
that?
getting into arguments is excellent, by the way, because that means you're actually communicating.
Yeah, no, that's true. My problem is since I've been an investigator for so many years, I'm so used to interviewing and interrogating people. Um, I think differently, right? So I'm a little quicker off the cuff with processing information and seeing the like where somebody's going with something
Yeah.
to where my wife like needs time. She needs time to think about these things. Um, and I have an issue with it's hard for me to step away from the situation and I should give it 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
Okay, let's now come back and talk about this. Because I just like think of myself sometimes in the interview room and I just want to like fire back and be like,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. And I'm like 4 or 5 steps ahead. And she's just like, would you relax for a second?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. And that makes sense, right? I mean, that's a good counter to the argument. Like,
yeah.
um, I and I guess she brings up a valid point in if there's somebody that's in your life that has standing,
Hmm.
your kids, your wife, a dear friend, you kind of owe it to them to respond and not react.
Yeah.
I mean, they've earned that. They've earned that right not
Yeah.
to um, be the recipient of, you know, a sharp, right out of the gate kind of response. Um, you know, somebody that doesn't have that standing. I mean, I'll admit, man. Um, I was at a luncheon and somebody was kind of. They made assumptions about the people at the table,
Hmm.
and they started talking about blue collar people,
Hmm.
and I didn't. They didn't know what I did for 30 years. They didn't know anything about John Kelly. And you know, we need to break it down for them, you know, because they're
Ooh.
not right. And I'm fucking sitting there, and my buddy is across the table. He's a consultant, and he's just looking at me, and I look at him, and he's just like, I can see that he's saying, please, 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 please do not go on the offensive here, right? And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes while maintaining control and not being overly emotional, sometimes people need to get checked.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important to say emotional intelligence doesn't mean kumbaya, everybody huggy
Yeah.
time. It means, I think, be measured
Yeah.
and in control.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's just like, listen, just think back, like if you're working the road as a police officer, right?
yeah,
You're on the road and you got to check somebody, like somebody's mouthing off, and you got to put them in their place, like real quick.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I'm going to take a breath, but guess what? I'm going to say some choice words. I'm going to put that person in their place. If I got to put my hands on them, I'm going to put my hands on them, and then we'll talk about it later. Like,
right.
that's also emotional intelligence.
Yeah, no, no, and again, it's measured, right? You don't. It's you're not at a 12 and you're not at a 3. If somebody needs to get checked at an 8, they get checked at an 8.
Yeah.
And the reason why you've been able to do that is because you've been able to process that very quickly
Yeah.
and come out with the correct response. that.
Yeah. You know what else I think, man, and this is like not pontificating here, but people really there's not like there's not as much physical consequence for people's actions anymore, right? So I think back in the day,
I miss those days. That was my love language, man. Physical touch.
yeah. It's funny because I used to talk to my dad about that. So nobody in my family, I have a cousin, he's like a second or third cousin to me that is involved in law enforcement. He's still active, but nobody else in my immediate family was ever involved in law enforcement. They were all nurses, school teachers. So I would talk to my dad about the craziest things. You know how it is. Like
Of
sometimes
course.
just crazy shit happens on the road. And I would explain to him how usually if there's a group of people, you can identify who the ringleader is. And if you put your hands on that person and control that person, magically everything works
Yeah.
itself out. But it's literally just, and I'm not saying slam the person to the
No, of
ground
course
or
not.
no, I'm literally saying just sometimes a touch on the shoulder just to let them know, hey, I'm here and this is not going to continue. That's
Right.
a very powerful move.
Oh, you know, to your point, even in business, right? When and I'm a prick because somebody else that read the same book that I read, it's a hand on the shoulder. And when I shake your hand, I put my hand on top of your hand. And it's like a dog pissing all over another dog, man.
Right.
It is a dominant play, right?
Yeah.
You watch some very savvy politicians or somebody that enters a room,
Mm-hmm.
they're always putting their hand on another man shoulder pat, like good, yeah, good job there, little guy, and,
Yeah.
and fuck it, I watch it and I go, wow, another power play. But when you do that right with a group and you're trying to de-escalate,
Mm-hmm.
there is a dynamic that gets established that yeah, I'm here and now I'm running this now.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
But
What so we talk about the self-awareness component, and when we've kind of bled a little bit into the self-management component. Talk about the self-man, and if it's cool with you, bro, I want to walk right through it. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
And then I also loved in the book Police Leadership Redefined, the EQ Advantage, Gene Reid. I love the fact that you use workplace scenarios
Yeah.
to drive home points, because everybody, when I'm reading this, I'm like, well, yeah, no, I've been both guys in that scenario. I've been the guy that lost his shit, and I've been the guy who was the recipient of somebody that had some emotional intelligence that
Mm-hmm.
added value to my life instead of taking it away. And so I love the fact that you intertwine uh, when you're trying to make a point, a
Yeah, thanks
dynamic
for that. That
that
was
we can
totally
all relate
strategic.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just my own. I'll be totally honest. I kind of got tired of reading leadership books that would just talk about these concepts, and I kind of had trouble applying it. Like I was like, I get it, but I don't really understand. Like, how could I actually use this?
Right.
So I just kind of, my wife and I actually, we sat down together and kind of worked on this book together and
Nice.
developing the characters and the different scenarios and all that kind of stuff. So that
Sure.
was fun to do.
Yeah, no, I found great value in that. All
Thank
right,
you.
well, there here are the techniques and the philosophy being implemented in a scenario that I can identify with.
Yeah.
It's no longer an abstract concept. It's something that I can actually look to and implement in my own interactions. And I thought that was really well done. I was like, oh, look at this. All right, man. Look at it, Gene. Look at this. He's not half as much of a moron as I thought he was. He's actually, man, he's actually connecting the dots for me, man. I love it.
That's very kind. But yeah, I'll talk about the self-management
Yeah,
part. And
man.
here's my different take on self-management. And I like to put my own twist on emotional intelligence. So
Please.
I like to listen, physical fitness has been like a huge part of my life.
Right.
I've
Well,
done everything from
like, let's listen. You're being humble. Like marathons, triathletes, jujitsu.
yeah. Whatever.
But
Yeah,
listen, that takes discipline, man. That takes
it does.
discipline. So let's not minimize that. You're not going for a walk, bro. You're not going for a walk.
Yeah.
I'd like to put you in the category of an extreme athlete. Okay.
Okay.
Just fucking
All right.
deal with it. All right, man.
All right.
Have some emotional intelligence and step into your light. Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
brother.
But
Yeah,
I
man.
think that that's necessary to actually have emotional intelligence and then be able to manage your emotions. So I like to use jujitsu as a lot of examples. I don't train jujitsu all the time. I do it twice a week. I've been doing it for a few years now, but whether it's running or lifting or jujitsu, whatever, you have to put yourself in really uncomfortable positions to experience emotions that you then have to manage. So if you're just somebody that just is kind of a blob and you don't work out and you don't put yourself in these challenging situations, you're not going to experience these emotions. Yeah, listen, actually, this is a great point. So last night I ran a 5K. One of our officers was tragically killed. I think it was 11, 12 years ago. So there's a 5K that honors him every year. So we ran
Memorial
that.
run or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So we
Yeah.
ran the 5K last night. It was my first time running this particular course. And there's this hill, it's called Monkey Hill. I've heard about it, and it's right at the tail end of the 5K. Now, I set out last night to set a personal record for my 5K time. And I wasn't really familiar with this course, but I'm on track, right? And I actually did. I set a personal record last night for my 5K, which is
Good
great.
job.
But thank you. But this Monkey Hill that you go up, most people walk up it. That's how steep it is. It's
Sure,
it's
I
that
don't
steep
doubt
to
it.
where
Yeah.
like running up it, and it's cobblestone, it's a whole thing.
Oh,
But I had a moment, and luckily I had a couple buddies who were kind of running next to me, but I had a moment to where I wanted to walk. Like, dude, I know all this stuff. I know all this self-management. I've done an Ironman triathlon. I do jujitsu. I
right.
do all the things. I told myself I'm not going to walk up Monkey Hill. I had a moment 3/4 of the way going up there that my brain said, bro, you
Right.
got to walk.
Fuck it.
Like,
Just walk. Just
just this
walk.
is getting
Right.
insane.
Mm.
And my heart rate was like 185 beats a minute. I mean, it was up there. But I really just thought like, yeah, you can shut up. I'm not listening to that. I had to
Right.
manage that. I had to control that emotion. And guess what? It went away and I made
Yeah.
it up the hill. But
Great example.
it is, but I would have never had the opportunity to test that system out in my brain if I don't put myself in that situation, right?
Right.
So you have to put yourself in those situations.
I think and it doesn't need to be doing some sort. I like the jujitsu. I used to roll as well. And
Mhm.
there's something about getting fucking manhandled
Oh, I'm terrible. I've been doing it
that
for 3 years and I'm terrible.
that humbles you
Yeah.
to understand the emotion of not being in control
Hmm.
and how you work through that, how you don't panic and make the situation worse.
Yeah.
How I mean they're life teaching lessons,
Hmm.
whether it's running, rolling, or you know what I've been doing lately is cold plunging.
Yeah.
Um, man, I don't want to be there. There's nothing soothing, comforting. It sucks. It's horrible. But when I'm done, ooh.
Can I
And
tell you
what
how much of a psycho I am real quick? So
yeah, please.
I bought a giant chest freezer. So I'm 6 foot tall. I bought one big enough to where I can
Oh,
literally lay down in it.
oh my God.
So I bought that about a year ago. I sealed it up all inside. And that's what I have one in my garage. That's what I use for a cold plunge. But
Dude.
also bear in mind, I am Norwegian.
Yeah,
So
that's actually you've got some sort of super uh genes that deal with the
the
cold
cold.
weather.
No,
Yeah,
seriously. I've been that way my whole life though. Like
yeah,
I've always been a shorts and a t-shirt guy in the middle of wintertime. You
yeah.
can ask my parents, I've always been like that. So
Huh. So your cold plunge needs to be get your wife to jack up that compressor. Get it down into the negatives, bro.
but great example with the
What's
cold
wrong with
plunge.
Gene? He's got frostbite on his limbs. I don't know. He cold plunging. But no, mentally, right? I mean, is there
Yes.
anything better? And all you have to do is endure. All you have to do is fucking suck it up. You don't
Yeah.
have to go run a 5K, but to get the same resiliency
Mhm.
footprint, right? Um, force yourself to do something extremely uncomfortable. And while you're doing it, I'll take page 66, breathe,
Yeah.
control your emotions, control the urge of wanting to flee and get away from it
Mhm.
and embrace it. And that's when I actually I can't meditate at all
Mm.
on a in any environment, when I cold plunge, I can meditate. It forces me to shut down everything else that's going on and focus on my breath. Um, and it's just, again, it's just another way talking about self-management.
Yeah, but that's like, so what we're talking about, all these different examples, and you're right,
Yes.
the cold plunge is probably the shortest time frame that you have to dedicate, but one of the most brutal
Right.
to actually. But we're actually there's it's an actual mechanism in the brain that has to get trained. Like, and the better you get at it, the easier it is for you to just overcome difficult situations and manage your emotions.
Right.
Imagine somebody that and you've probably seen videos of people who don't do this at all. They go and get in a cold plunge and they freak out.
Right.
And they can only stand maybe 30 seconds in there.
Right.
It's just because that mechanism in their brain just hasn't been, they don't have the reps. They don't have the
Right.
reps in.
They haven't conditioned their mind to
Mhm.
accept things that are uncomfortable
Yeah.
and to know that you're going to be okay.
And that there's a benefit from it. It's not just like I when I sit in a cold plunge or I'm doing jujitsu and somebody's fully mounted on me and they're strangling me, and
Yeah.
like I see the benefit of it. To be honest,
Right.
like I don't see that this is yes, this is uncomfortable and I can't breathe, but there's a benefit to it, and that's like it's actually part of resilience is just optimism, just kind of
Right.
seeing the good in things, right? Seeing
Right.
not always seeing the negative.
Right. And it's funny you say the good in things. So, our friend Jocko, his whole, good.
Yeah.
Oh, you got passed over for promotion. Good. This
Hmm.
will give you some time to reflect, redefine, and become better at your current position so you can achieve your goal next time. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always, right? There's always a lesson to take away. It's just a matter of us having the right lens, right? Having the right focal point on, well, how is this going to benefit me? And you're right. If you don't start conditioning I've always said, like, people talk about resiliency. I say, listen, you don't become resilient in the storm, man.
Mm-mm.
Right? This is the beauty of being proactive and being engaged in your own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. Like, do it now. Right?
Yeah.
Do it now when the seas are calm,
Hmm.
right? Because in the storm, man, you're gonna weather the storm based on the level of your commitment to your own mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, mental health and wellness, your own resiliency. It's like that adage, adversity doesn't build character, it exposes it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I love the book. I love what you're doing because it's all on the front end. We're front end loading, man. We're giving you
Mhm.
the tools, the skill sets to win and to succeed and to be part of not only your solution, but the solution of the people that you lead.
Yeah, I'll also say this, like people don't get it confused with resilience to where once you become resilient, and you can always get more resilient, but I think people have this false sense of security to where, oh, I'm resilient, now I won't have any more problems. No, no, no. The problems never go away.
No,
It's just
they
how
keep
well
coming.
you can
Right.
combat them and get over them and grow from them. And arguably, the more resilient you become, the more problems you will have because you're now going to put your like I'll just take myself for example. Well, I had a certain level of resilience. I then started the business. I encountered more problems that I've never experienced before. I then had to become, and I'm working on it now, becoming more resilient to get over those things. Well,
Right.
guess what's going to happen once I hit that level? There's going to be another level and then another level. It's just
Right.
never ending.
And that's why this thing of ours, man, constant, never ending self improvement.
Mhm.
We know that challenges are gonna if we're living our best lives, challenges multiply.
Yeah.
It it's by design. If
Mhm.
the more you push yourself to be a better version of you, to grow a business, to better your time on a 5K, these challenges are going to present themselves. And nobody's giving you the trophy, man. You gotta win it. You gotta win it. And you win it by putting the work in. Um, Dude, I love that. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, man, let's move to social awareness.
Yeah.
So we've discussed awareness. We've discussed the self-management part of it, and kind of seeing us in the situation. I kind of like draw a parallel to this to like the OODA loop, like
Yeah.
observe, orient, decide, and act. You know, what the fighter pilots use. Um, this is like our own little personal OODA loop, right?
Yep.
Having that awareness. So let's talk about social awareness.
Yeah, so social awareness, this is self-awareness is my favorite part of emotional intelligence. Social awareness is second. So here's what I love about social awareness is it just requires you to detach from yourself and start thinking about other people.
Mm.
And that's a really hard thing for people to do. But you have to understand how I start with this, just even how does your mere presence in a situation change the dynamics in a room, right? So I like to observe this myself. Let's say I go to a training, right? And there are a multitude of different ranks there. So let's say it's all people in our department, and there's captains, there's lieutenants, there's sergeants, there's officers. This miraculous thing happens to where all the ranks seem to sit at the same table, right? So all the captains sit together, all the sergeants sit together, all the officers sit together. So what I like to do, and also I think I told you this, I don't know if you know, but so I work in internal affairs. So I've been internal affairs for the last, it's coming up on like 3 years now.
Okay.
Historically, most people don't like the guy who's in internal affairs. It's just,
Right.
for the most part.
Right.
But when I really started getting involved in emotional intelligence, I made it a point to interject myself in the group of young officers, right? So here's the sergeant from internal affairs.
Right.
And now I go and talk to that group of officers, or I sit at their table, and then I just observe, like, well, how does that social dynamic change now? Well, it changes because initially they're uncomfortable.
Right.
They're uncomfortable because, well, here's the internal affairs guy. Now he's sitting at our table, like, really got to watch our P's and Q's. Okay, well, then it evolves because the more you do it, right? Oh, now they hear, like, oh, Gene does jujitsu. Oh, actually, I've heard about him. I've actually seen some videos of him on YouTube. I know the gym he goes to. Well, now that social dynamic starts to change a little bit and people become a little more comfortable.
Right.
Well, the same thing applies. Like, let's say you hold the rank of captain. Like in our department, that's a staff level executive officer,
Okay.
right? If a captain goes and walks around the hallways and they've never really done that before, it's a little awkward, right? Like people are like,
Sure.
oh shit, what's the captain doing
Yeah.
here?
Why is the captain
Why
coming
is the
into my
captain here? That's
unit?
you have to
Yeah.
be socially aware of that. But the more you do it, it just becomes part of the norm, right? So now
Right.
you're socially aware of the whole point is how does my mere presence impact other people?
Right.
Yeah.
And so now, now this is some bleed over, man, because now, like we're talking. I think we're also talking about caring,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and if you're gonna be socially aware, use that time and that presence in that room to add value,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So we're and you can do that if you're self-aware,
Mhm.
right? And see,
Yeah,
so
that's perfect. Yeah.
it's all supporting and playing into each other. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to be socially aware, right? If you didn't work on the self-awareness
right,
and you don't know how to manage your emotions,
right,
you're not gonna be able to have the ability to be socially aware. You're just not. Doesn't
right,
work that way.
right. It's funny in reading this, as much as we like to bitch about leadership, I think it's low hanging fruit, man. I
It
think
is.
it's just like we don't like when the public goes after they take a shot at the one guy who's going through a personal crisis, and you know he does something really stupid. We don't like when that guy gets uh, paraded around. I
Mhm.
think leadership right now, I think there are more good leaders than there are bad, but I think
Mhm.
what the dynamic is, the bad ones are so bad
Yeah.
that it shocks the conscience, because we're looking at national levels of decisions made by people that the rank and file are left scratching their head. Like, what are we doing now? Like,
Mhm.
what's the mission? And so for every bad leader out there, I think there are hundreds of guys and girls out there who get this, who
Mhm.
get this, who obviously there's always room for improvement, but understand that servant leadership, they care more about their people than they do themselves, while understanding the role that self-care plays so they can be everything that they need to be for those individuals. Um, and Gene, I don't know where the hell I was going with this. This was a dementia moment, but
That's
I just
okay. No, you said something that I wanna pick up on
please.
because also being socially aware and being a great leader sometimes means you need to get in somebody's ass. This is not all about, like, holding hands and hugging and
Right.
kissing and all that kinda stuff, like, sometimes a great leader knows when it's time to pull somebody back, like micromanaging. We talk about micromanaging.
Sure.
It's often talked about in a very negative connotation, like, "Oh, you don't wanna be a micromanager." I disagree. I think there's a time and a place to be a micromanager.
Sure.
So if you have a younger officer who's just they have all the potential in the world but they're just like flying off, they're not being safe, they're putting other people in danger, you need to micromanage that individual
Right.
for maybe 3 to 4 months and then you can like loosen the reins up a little bit. But that requires social awareness, right?
Right.
Because the conversation you need to have with that officer is not going to be in roll call in front of everybody.
No.
It's gonna be in that private room like we talked about, because if you do it in front of everybody,
Mm.
he or she's gonna
Yeah.
dig their
No,
heels
you
in.
ain't gonna get any buy-in there, my friend.
Now you're challenging them, especially and listen, call what it is. If it's a man-to-man thing, there's
Yeah.
something there with, like, challenging another man in
Sure.
front of other people.
No.
You gotta be socially aware of that, right?
Sure.
So, no, you're spot on, and my point is and this is coming from me working in internal affairs for 3 years. There's a time and a place for discipline as a tool, and
Right.
it can be very effective. But
Right.
you can't be a buddy boss all the
No.
time, you know what I mean? Like and unfortunately, that a buddy boss can be just as bad as just a totally inept leader,
Yeah,
you know what I
no
mean?
doubt. Yeah, I mean, you're there to keep things going in the right direction, to add value, to to take care of your people, to take care of the agency, to make sure that the mission gets accomplished. And sometimes that requires you, dropping the hammer. Um, and
Yeah,
what's acceptable, what's unacceptable.
yep,
I've certainly challenged the parameters of that over my career. What's acceptable, what's unacceptable, and the only way sometimes to let people know what's unacceptable is to check them. Um,
yep,
and I think the way we go about doing that, as long as it's done with a sense of fair play,
mhm.
hey, everybody comes away better. Everybody comes away better.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that actually bleeds beautifully into so the final part to emotional intelligence,
yeah,
and it's the pinnacle, it's the top, is relationship management.
right,
So everything that you just talked about is managing relationships. So that's like, in my opinion, as a leader, again, whether you're formal or informal, it doesn't
right,
matter. The ultimate goal is to be able to effectively manage positive relationships over time. Like
sure,
that's really all we're doing. All we're doing is managing relationships with people in a positive manner, adding value to people, looking out for people's best interests. But none of that happens unless you're self aware, can manage your emotions, and you're socially aware. It's only then that you can effectively be, happily married, have a
yeah,
great relationship with your kids,
yeah,
be a great boss at work. Like all of this stuff is all intertwined.
yeah. It's funny, and I've got this saying, Gene. We didn't get fucked up overnight, bro. So we're not going to get fixed overnight. It's a process.
Mhm.
And it can be accelerated if you know what you need to be doing. See,
Yeah.
some people put a blindfold on and they're just throwing darts at the board and they're hoping eventually to figure something out that works, right? Um, and I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that what we are doing, I'd like to ride on your coattails here for a second, is that we figured some things out.
Yeah.
And because we figured some things out, not saying that we're perfect, not
Mhm.
saying that we're not going to fail again
Mhm.
at some point, right? I think failure is a great teacher. Um, but we've figured some things out. And because we figured some things out, there's a moral obligation for us to share what we have figured out
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can start adding value to the culture of a profession that we both care very much about.
Yeah. This emotion I mean, honestly, that's the whole reason I wrote the book was when I started looking into emotional intelligence, it was just such a light bulb thing for me. And then
Uh-huh.
I'm a big fan of, like, I read a really good book, right? And it has a lot of good philosophies and techniques. Well, then I go do the thing, right?
Right.
I don't really tell anybody about it. I just go do whatever it is for 3, 6 months or whatever. And then if I have some positive results from that, well, that's when I'll start telling people about it. Well, emotional intelligence, that's exactly what happened. I had heard about emotional intelligence,
Sure.
but then I really started kind of digging deeper, put my own little spin on it,
Right.
having positive impacts, and then talking to people about it. And dude, I'm telling you, like every leadership situation, whether good, bad, or indifferent, that somebody would talk to me about, I would immediately be able to plug it into one of those 4 pillars.
Right.
And I've never been failed. Like there's always a something to do with emotional intelligence in the leadership space. And again, it's not just at work, it's at home, it's all over the place.
By developing, I'm quoting you, by developing self-awareness, mastering self-management, and refining social awareness, you lay the groundwork for establishing and sustaining robust, positive relationships. Man, that's what
That's
it's
it.
about, man.
That's the answer, man. That's it. It's very
That's what
simple,
it's
but it's
about.
like that's it.
I love it, man. I love it. I really did enjoy this read. And thank you for not making it a Bible-sized text book. That
It was
was,
strategic.
yeah, man. Well, it's gotta be. It's gotta be something that, understanding that everybody's going in 12 different directions and that
Mhm.
time is a commodity that most people aren't getting back. And so if you want, for the listener, man, if you want to dedicate, I'm gonna say 2.5 hours
Yeah.
um to make yourself a better version of you and positively impact. Listen, fuck police work, all right? If just to be a better human being,
Yeah.
right? To be a better man or woman and enrich the relationships of the people that you care about, you got to pick up Police Leadership Redefined, the EQ Advantage by Gene Reid. Um, Emotional intelligence. There was a thing I saw earlier today. I guess Albert Einstein had like an IQ of 160, maybe.
Mm.
Well, with AI, like AI, that whole component, they have an IQ of like over 1,000, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but that's not making anybody better.
No.
Like emotional IQ with no EQ, it might as
Yes.
well be zero, man.
Yeah.
It might as well be zero. And so the way that we become better human beings isn't necessarily with our intellect. I mean, you have to be, moderately intelligent, but the
Hmm.
way that we really add value is with our emotional intelligence. And you've done your part in this, man. I appreciate that. Um, where can we? I know you've sent me some things. You're busy. You're getting after it, man. Um, Talk to me about the business, what you're doing, um, any upcoming events, or just let the listener know, man, where we can find you, where we can follow you. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, but for the listener right now, what do you got for us, brother?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started a company. It's called Reid Training Solutions. That was back in December of last year. And basically, what I do is I travel around the country and I talk to law enforcement organizations primarily
Yeah,
about emotional intelligence and paradigms and creating good habits and how all that intertwines to, yeah, it bodes well for leadership, but really just how to improve yourself just as a human being
yeah.
overall.
This
And
sounds
that's
like a
really,
program that is applicable from the academy recruit
yeah.
all the way up to the chief or the head of the organization.
Yeah, yeah. So you talk about speaking events. So I'm I have a couple things coming up, depending on when this episode comes out. So first responder conferences, which I know you just presented at. So they have a conference up in North Jersey. That's on May 13th. And then later in May, I'll be at the Chiefs of Police conference, which is in Delaware. So it's basically all the chiefs of police and executive
Nice.
staff. They asked me to come and speak at that. So I'm really looking forward to that because that's like my homegrown, that's where I work. That's all the people that I can have some positive influence on.
Those are the people that need to hear this message,
Yeah.
so they can hopefully, right? Hopefully take that message and run with it, and maybe bring you to their PDs and their organizations and start adopting proactively some of these techniques and philosophies. That's
Yeah,
awesome, man.
absolutely. Yeah.
You're on LinkedIn as well?
Yeah, LinkedIn, you can just find me on there, Gene Reid, PhD, if you just search that. Oh, you know what I want to talk about real quick? Actually,
Yeah,
so on
man.
Police One, I partner with Police One. So
Nice.
if you type in on Google Gene Reid, PhD, Police One, I wrote a bunch of articles for them, but I also have a 10-part video series. It's called Next Gen Leadership Solutions for Today's Police Supervisors. So it's a 10-part video series I did with them. And the
Nice.
videos are real short. They're like 4 to 6 minutes long,
Yeah.
but actually only one of the videos is on emotional intelligence. The other 9 are on just different aspects of leadership that, I've learned throughout my career, and just
Sure.
different little tidbits here and there. So that's totally free. I mean, anybody can go check that
Dude,
out.
on policeone.com.
Yeah. Yep.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
brother.
I love it. Um, and before we part ways, brother, um, something to leave the guy. Obviously it's a heavy law enforcement listenership, man. They're coming in, they're going home. Maybe they listen to the first half of the episode on their way into work, and they're gonna finish it up on their way home. Something you can leave the guys and girls out there doing this job. Some words from you to them.
Yeah. Yeah. My words are this: everything starts with you, right? It's the first part to emotional intelligence. It's self-awareness, but it's kind of the cliche thing where, if the plane's going down, you got to put the gas mask on yourself. I'm just telling you right now, and this is from my own experience and a lot of experience from other people. You are not going to be able to effectively help anybody in this world, your wife, your husband, your kids, your coworkers, unless you yourself are squared away. And that starts with self-awareness. And also, this pursuit of happiness, right? I'm telling you right now, this comes from experience. The money's not going to make you happy. The new workout routine's not going to make you happy. The new job, the new this, the new that. No, you become happy, right, by becoming self-aware and doing these things for yourself, and then all those things start to fall in place. We all have this in like this reverse order where we think that, oh, when I make this amount of money, I will become happy. When I get this new business deal, then I will be happy. I'm telling you right now, it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. It's the opposite. Once you become happy, right? And there's ways to do that. And I encourage you to read the book, and emotional intelligence will help you get there. But it starts with you first, and then everything after that falls in line.
Dude, that's some great parting words. The we wonder why we struggle with relationships, because we get into relationships in the hopes that that's the person that'll make us happy.
Hmm.
And you got to figure that out for you, man, before you bring anybody else into your life with that. Those are awesome words. Ladies and gentlemen, Gene Reid, the book is Police Leadership Redefined, the EQ Advantage. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's a great read, and it's a great read by Gene Reid. There you go. That's how I did that. Brother, thanks for your time, man.
Thanks for having me on, bro.
And that is that, my friend.